Hello, welcome to this second video in the series of Tactica videos covering Tau strategies. Now in this one we're going to work with the Kauyon, or the Patient Hunter strategy. Now this one's significantly different than the Montka in principle. However, it does rely a little bit on some of the Montka concepts to pull off the strategy as a whole. The problem is, in order to pull this one off, you have to be sure not to sacrifice what we'll call your lure portion of the force. Otherwise, you are just sticking with a true Montka style. So, let's go ahead and read right in the Codex what the Kauyon or Patient Hunter strategy is all about. The Kauyon art of war relies on the interaction between the hunter and the lure. The lure can be anything from a carefully deployed friendly unit to an objective known to be vital to the foe. Using wisdom and foresight, the patient hunter anticipates the enemy's path to their goal and deploys in the most advantageous manner to attack them. For example, a cadre practicing Kauyon might set up an attack along a known enemy advancement, placing a lure team far forward to inflict damage on the foe before falling back and luring them into the jaws of a Tau ambush. Now, true masters of the ambush attack devise so many layers of plans within plans that only at the end do their opponents realize that all of their actions have been anticipated, even orchestrated, to achieve the attacker's end result. Many a foe has been drawn in by the spiderweb plans of a Kauyon, lured by intentional weak spots left on a Tau battle line, or induced into a killing zone by teams feigning retreat. Nowhere is this more the case than the battle against Commander Shadowsun, whose grasp of Kauyon warfare is second to none. So, in this particular style of warfare, you're relying on manipulating your opponent. This particular style, as opposed to Montka, really draws heavily on some of Sun Tzu's concepts. So you can go to my playlist for the Academy and you'll find a series on Sun Tzu that would definitely, you can see a lot of correlations here. The key to this particular strategy is not the overwhelming force that the Montka has. Though it's a component that is used, the key here really is in manipulating your opponent. That's the true strength here. Now, much of what is detailed in this style actually happens outside the time frame of a game. So it's kind of actually difficult to represent this very well on the battlefield. You can, but it's not going to be in its full glory. Because if you think about it, just like with the Montka, in order to pull this one off in line with the fluff, you need to know exactly what your opponent's forces are, because you want to understand what the opponent's bringing, so you have what you need to entice his attack and have the counters to attack and destroy whatever it is he's bringing at the appropriate time. Again, your opponent's probably not going to want you to list tailor. Now, you also have to be able to set the terrain up to your advantage. In this whole process, you're selecting the battlefield site that best maximizes, just like in Montka, your ability to manipulate the opponent and strike from the appropriate directions. Now, the worst thing about this particular style in trying to implement on tabletop is the fact that when you use Maelstrom games, they completely override anything that you're trying to do in this patient hunter scheme, because the Maelstrom games change objectives every turn, basically. And the problem with that is you don't get to stick to a single plan. You have to, every turn, adapt your moves, adapt your strategy to accomplish the objective of the day kind of thing. So it's very, very hard to put this particular one into practice, except within maybe the Emperor's Will missions, especially in the Purge and some of the, I meant Eternal War missions. Emperor's Will and Purge are some pretty good candidates for that, and actually so is Relic. Yeah, that's probably those are the best three. Any kill point game, Emperor's Will, where you've got a single objective in your zone and in the opponent's zone, and the Relic, those are the really ideal missions to reflect this particular style or strategy of Tau combat. So, assuming you've got one of those three, let's try to put this into play on the tabletop. So, the first thing you're going to do, again, since you can't select the terrain and make it meet your needs exactly, you need to pay very, very careful attention to the table before you select sides. Hopefully you'll get that roll off and be able to select. But either way, you need to understand where are the choke points and where are the kill zones that could be on the table, regardless of which side of the table you end up with. Because that's how you're going to try to orchestrate this whole lure and trap perspective. So, once you do have your table side decided and it's your turn to deploy, you need to split your force into two: a lure component and basically the trap component, the strike force. Now, in the relic, the lure actually is the relic itself and potentially a unit or two that the opponent will have to worry about. For example, it could be a set of battle crisis suits or stealth suits that can quickly get into position, grab the relic, and during the assault phase jump an additional at least up to 6 inches, because the relic can't move any more than 6 inches per phase. So they could move 6 inches up to get the relic, then they could run up to 6 inches, then they can assault jump. So they could actually cover 18 inches per turn. That's something that could frighten the opponent. So a suit of some sort that can jump around and hold the relic may be a good lure in that case, in addition to the relic, because you know the opponent's going to move toward it. Now, another thing that you could do outside the relic is just use an ethereal. It's a very juicy victory point for the opponent because it's an extra victory point on top of the kill point it yields. So that's very, very good. So you may want to put that out there as a lure, something to tempt the opponent to go after it. Now, the rest of your force needs to be deployed in support, not necessarily in reserve, but in support of that lure. You want to put in a position that they can attack any unit that approaches the lure, or you want to be able to arrive via reserve near the position of the lure, or in a position to destroy the key element of the enemy that you're trying to remove. They could be positioned in such a way that they'll be difficult to hit, but with a short move they could be in support of the lure. So maybe where they are right when you deploy them, they're too far away to do anything in support of the lure, but with a short move they can get in position. And where they are deployed, they're more protected from enemy fire, as an example. Okay. Now, some of the units that you can use this pretty much is any units in the codex are useful in one aspect or another, but there are some really key pieces, units that are really good for this. One is any of the flyers. They are a fantastic trap unit because they are forced to come in from reserve. They can come in anywhere on the battlefield. They can cover at least 18 inches, up to 36 inches, so it's easy to get in position. The Razor Shark's fighter that's in front of you actually has turreted, chin-mounted and turreted ion rifle cannons in the back. So those are going to be able to give basically a 360 coverage, so you can just basically fly it in a big circle around the table every turn, pouring fire down on the key units. So that's a good one. Any outflankers or deep strikers are very useful because, again, they can spring the trap from the sides where the opponent is less likely to expect them or present stronger armor. You'll be able to really maximize anti-vehicle moves that way. So one of the things that you want to consider strongly, even though you don't normally do this, is using an ethereal in the list. Because, as I said before, the ethereal is a free victory point to the opponent if you can kill it. Now, if you have a devilfish nearby, that is going to help because you'll be able to, when the ethereal becomes threatened, you can embark them on the devilfish and escape them. But that is going to be a very tempting target. It's a lure that's going to be hard to resist. Now, the small force that you're going to start as a lure, you put in your deployment zone, but if you can put it into a fortification or maybe behind an Aegis defense line to give them a little bit more resilience and make it look like it's a little bit more impressive, that might force the opponent to draw more units toward it into the trap. Now, when you start thinking about the actual attempt to launch the trap, now you want to bring in all your favorite units. And these could include stuff like the Riptide and the Hammerhead. Any unit that's in the Codex, like I mentioned, especially the ones that are very strong for the Montka, can be used as the strike force to spring the trap in this Patient Hunter scheme. Now, because you're splitting your army into two halves, lure and strike force, you're not going to have as many of those heavy hitters like you would in a Montka list. But they should be enough heavy hitters, like a Riptide, that you'll be able to deal out some serious damage to the opponent. And if you lure them properly into a particular part of the field, you'll be able to get more shots on them. Especially, again, if you have outflankers coming in behind, putting down strength 5 or higher shooting into the rear of vehicles. There's not much that you can't hurt and can't damage when it comes time to spring your trap. Okay, now, there are actually quite a few formations that really work well in this particular style. There's more than I expected when I first looked through the Codex, but you have the Armored Interdiction Cadre, which is essentially several vehicles. You've got Air Support Cadre, which is all flyers, very useful there. Even though it does have the bomber, that can be useful. You've got the Retaliation Cadre, which has some really good benefits. And then finally, you've got the Infiltration Cadre, which is actually tailor-made for this particular strategy. So let's kind of go in that order. When you look at the Armored Interdiction Cadre, you've got 3 units of Hammerheads. Now, it's at least 3 vehicles, could be up to 9. Then you have an additional unit of Skyray gunships. That gives you an extra, basically a nice umbrella for anti-air. Not that that's something that you always need. But one of the things you get to do is it's a special rule. You pick a point anywhere on the battlefield at the start of your shooting phase, and that is essentially the center of what's called your predictive targeting grid. And so any of the models in this formation, these tanks that shoot at a target within 6 inches of that point, get to reroll failed to hits. That's good. That's a really nice way to do this. So if the Relic has been taken as an example, or there's a unit holding the Emperor's Will objective, you just simply pick that Relic, and then everything within 6 inches of that is going to be receiving some hurt. That's especially important if you've got the area effect weapons, like the Railgun Submunition, which is Strength 6 AP4 Large Blast, or the overcharged Ion Cannon, Strength 8 AP3 Large Blast. You drop that on, because it's re-rollable, you can avoid the 1 on the Gets Hot roll for the Ion Cannon, and you can just ensure or help ensure that you're going to land on target. Very, very important. Now, when we go to the next one, which is the actual Air Support Cadre, this one, it's essentially 3 planes. The 2, the Razor Sharks, 1 are the Bomber. Now, the Bomber is useful because it can lay down extra fire. It does have the bomb, which is Strength 5 AP5 Large Blast. But it also has its 2 drones, interceptor drones, that can detach and do some additional damage. And those are actually part of this. So one of the advantages of this particular squadron formation is that basically you can ignore the effect of crew stunned or shaken, which is great. That means you don't have to worry about having snapshots. Now, on a bomber, that's important. But it helps you keep that target flying in the middle of the table. Sorry, not target, but the flyers flying in the middle of the table, using their turrets to blast whatever is closest. And then you also get repair systems, so you can actually repair hull points in these flyers. So that's a good way, again, to keep the units around a little bit longer so that they can deal out more damage as the trap is sprung. Now, the Retaliation Cadre, this is actually a pretty good one. It feels very Montka, and in a sense it is, but you get 1 Riptide, 1 Broadside unit, 3 units of Crisis Suits, and the Commander. So this could be as few as 6 models, and of course many, many more are possible. But one of the things that this gets is every unit has Relentless. Now this doesn't sound like it's a big deal because most battlesuits are Relentless already, but it gives the broadside Relentless, which means it can move and shoot its railguns or its missile pods without snap firing. It can actually move and shoot, even though they're heavy weapons. Normally wouldn't be able to do that. Now, the other advantage to this is that they have +1 to the ballistic skill on the turn they arrive, and you basically decide at the beginning of the game when they're going to come in. So if you decide to keep this entire formation in reserve, you can use the low altitude deployment rule, which means on the start of your second turn, they automatically deep strike. There's no need to roll. The entire formation just comes in. Alternatively, you could let it, roll normally and bring them in piecemeal, but I don't think you'd really want to do that. Now, the danger, though, here is that you have to come in turn 2. Now, that may not give you enough time to draw the opponent's forces far enough forward to set them up for that perfect strike. So you have to be careful when you use the retaliation cadre, but it does fit the theme very, very well. Now, finally, my favorite is the infiltration cadre. Now, I'll have a separate video actually covering this particular formation later, but right now we're just going to talk about how to use it within this Kauyon approach. Now, for the infiltration cadre, you've got a Piranha unit, you got 2 units of stealth suits, and you got 3 units of Pathfinders. Now, what this is good for is you have the ability to, in this case, if the opponent destroys any one of those units, immediately all the rest of your army comes in at the start of your next turn. There's no need to roll. Every reserve comes in. That could be very useful, especially if you aren't able to get them in turn 2 like you wanted. You can offer up a sacrificial unit on the beginning of your turn 3 or the end of your turn 2, whatever, and force the opponent to kill them so that you end up getting everything coming in. Now, they also have the possibility of bringing in extra secret missile support. If those Pathfinders score 3 or more marker light hits, the marker lights still are used normally, but there's an additional strength 8 AP3 secret missile hit delivered. That's pretty good. That's an extra shot. You always want to have an extra shot. And so you can really put the hurt on anything that's on the objective you're trying to go for, or anything that's on the relic. Now, normally the Pathfinders are kind of squishy. Stealth suits aren't that bad, and Piranhas are kind of fragile. But because of the way you can synergize these, you're actually going to be able to spring them as part of a trap, bringing Pathfinders in from the side of the tables, outflanking, for example, deep striking the crisis suits, bringing the Piranha in from reserve or hiding in the back of the table until it's time to strike, and then moving it as far up the table as you can, as fast as you can, getting down the shots that you need. There's a lot of potential with that particular unit. If you want to know more, shortly there will be a video out about this infiltration cadre, and we'll go into more details about that. But anyway, those are good formations to use to try to pull this off. Again, the whole concept being lure the opponent into a position where you can then apply overwhelming force to individual targets that need to be obliterated, sequentially. It's basically called destroying the opponent in detail, one unit at a time. There is actually a battle report, one of my Saber duels, in which I use this exact same strategy. There's a link there'll be a link at the end of the video and a link in the bottom of the description, where you'll be able to see this strategy actually pull off. And I'm using a void shield generator and some infantry with some tanks to kind of be a bait in the corner of a table to draw the opponent in. It is a relic mission. Draw them in, and that frees up the space so I can bring in all my Air Force, which is most of my reserves, to come in and deal some real damage, to trap the opponent, get them in a weak position, and then handle them. You'll be able to see how well that works. Won't give away the end of the mission because it's a strategy, not necessarily. It's not a guaranteed win, and I don't want you to think of any of these strategies is a guaranteed win. It takes more finesse and more discipline to actually pull this particular strategy off than the Montka, because you can actually build a list to do the Montka without much thinking. So for those of you who play Tau, I hope this was enlightening. Give you a perspective of how you can build a list around this concept. And for those of you who are going to face it, maybe now you'll kind of maybe you'll be able to see it unfold as it comes out. Now, this particular video, I won't discuss how to counter it. I'm going to save that for a different video, simply because there are too many variables in this particular strategy to cover. So, hope you found that helpful. Go share, like, and subscribe. Let me know what you think below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.